Don Quixote is going to be the last opera done by San Diego Opera. Do you think that people can focus their attention on the work itself with all this other stuff going around about the opera closing?
I actually think they can, because we've had an extraordinary increase in sales over the last 3 days. More than we've sold in 3 days for any opera this season. So I think there's a lot of people who want to come and celebrate San Diego Opera. It's not a wake, it's celebrate 49 years of great music, great singers. So I'm very pleased that they appear to be focusing on the opera itself.
And how do you feel about that? The fact that ticket sales are going up after you've announced that the opera's closing, when you're very well received, a mass ball had like a quarter of the house empty.
Right. I don't mean to be smart about it, but maybe we should have announced the closing after every opera to sell the next one. It's actually tragic, because it just shows that there could be an audience there, but they don't respond enough. The fact that A Masked Ball played to 74% is extraordinarily bad for a quality production like that. And this has been the issue for about 4 consecutive years, that ticket sales have diminished. And now I get people emailing me and calling me saying, well, if I knew there was trouble, I would have come. And that doesn't make sense. Or if I knew there was trouble, I would have donated money. Well, I've been on the stage several times in the last couple of years asking for money and encouraging people to get friends to come and buy more tickets, and that has not worked. And that's what has put us into this situation, that we will run out of cash before the next season. And that's why this rather drastic move has had to be made.
And what do you think about the fact that it is Don Quixote that is going to be your closing?
The fact that Don Quixote closes has some sentimentality about it, I suppose. Don Quixote is the one who had the impossible dream. He attacked the windmills, and that was unsuccessful. And he dies at the end. So it is very operatic, but it's also a great work, and that's the important thing with the brilliant Ferruccio Furlanetto, greatest bass in the world, returning to San Diego Opera. He's been here so often, over 29 years, he reminded me last night. That's what he thinks of the company. And to have him and Anke Fondung and Eduardo Chama, it's just a great cast. And interestingly, it's local. The set and costume designers are local, the conductor is local. It was built in our scenic studio, the costumes were made in our costume shop. It's just another example of what happens here and what's going to be lost, but we wanted to celebrate the company.
What is going to be the impact in terms of when the opera closes? How many people were regularly employed here that are now going to be facing unemployment?
There are many affected. Our full-time staff is only 40, and many of those will be let go immediately after Don Quixote, but the trickle-down is very significant. The symphony, it plays for us, and we paid them for every performance, and that money won't be there. There's also a gap in their schedule. We have very loyal wig and makeup staff, electricians, stage hands, chorus. All of those will lose the opportunity to work with us. Some in the technical side may be able to work with other organizations, such as the Convention Center, because they're union members, and the union will do everything they can. The singers, though, lose opportunities. Soloists who used to sing here won't be coming here in the future, and it's another opera company lost, along with the other 8 or 9 that have gone, including New York City Opera, which means there are fewer opportunities for American singers, solo singers. So losing an opera company is very, very significant, and we're very sad that it has had to happen.
One of the things I'm going to focus on in this particular story about Don Quixote is that there's more to opera than just the singers. In this one, there's also choreography and dance.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
I think that Don Quixote can be a great celebration of the company because, again, it has all of the elements of great opera. It's not a grand opera the way Aida is or Carmen. We've always done a mix of operas, the grand operas, the chamber operas. There are people who think we've never done that. They should look at our history. But when they see Don Quixote, we have our wonderful chorus, we have great soloists, we have ballet, dance, Spanish dance in a French opera. And the music is so Spanish at the beginning, you would think that you were in Spain. all of these elements with the sets, the costumes, the lighting, the orchestra, opera pulls everything together on stage as no other art form can. It's all here for Don Quixote. I urge people to come, experience it, and celebrate the company, but recognize at the same time what we're losing, because that's the tragedy. This is the third time that we've staged Don Quixote. The first time was back in the 60s, as I recall, and we created this new production about 4 or 5 years ago, and I was the stage director. So I was involved in all of the design work with the design team. It is the same physical set and costumes, but my former assistant from the previous production is taking it on, Keturah Stickan. And I've said to Keturah, forget what I did, throw away the book, start again, make it better. And at the rehearsals, I think it's going to be better, and that's the way it should be. It's a great cast and a truly wonderful Dulcinea with Anke Fondung. But it's going to be great, again, built in our scenic studios. It shows what this company has done. And Karen Keltner's conducting. I mean, she's been the backbone of this company for so long. Keturah virtually lives here these days, so it's a home team, and I think we'll hit a home run.
Now, we did talk about the fact that Don Quixote is about a character who tilts at windmills no matter what people tell him. Is that kind of, the dreaming the impossible dream thing better suited to an opera than to the real world then?
Dreaming the impossible dream is what opera companies are about all the time. Opera companies eat money, and therefore we need more money than a symphony does or a theatre company. We're labor intensive. Our casts are very expensive because they're unique people. They're not actors of whom there are many, they're singers of whom there are few at the highest quality who could sing on our stage, unamplified, 3,000 seats. So tilting at windmills is what opera companies do. I say we pirouette on the edge of a razor blade. One mistake and you're gone, as happened to New York City Opera. Life is different. I mean, we all tilt at our own personal windmills. We all have our own issues. We all have our own dreams, as Don Quixote does. So we'll all find something in the darkened theatre to identify with. What I love about opera is we can come and we can be the villain, we can be the lover, we can be whatever we want for a couple of hours and either be inspired by what we see or open our hearts to what we see. Don Quixote has such feeling in it that I think we'll all feel the sadness of the opera, the sadness of the closing of the company. But again, I think we'll exult in the fact that opera is great art and we have great talent here to perform it.
And would you speculate on what opera might be like in San Diego in the future? Do you think there is a way for it to come back, or will it come back in a different form?
Opera can exist in San Diego. I've had many letters, many of them hateful, saying that we should have changed the company into a small chamber company. Well, you can't if you've run out of money. Modifications can't be made. But I've said to those people, start an opera company tomorrow. Start looking for the money. Decide what work you're going to do and where you're going to do it. The difficulty is that this was tried by Lyric Opera San Diego, and they didn't succeed in attracting a large audience or a large donor base, because many of us here still love the Aidas, Bohemes, Carmens, Rigolettos, Toscas. These take vast resources, and to train an audience to come to something that is smaller, less known, because most of the chamber works are not well known, to train an audience to do that will take time. But yes, there can be opera here. It will be of a different scale, but we need the person who wants to drive that opportunity, and I hope somebody turns up sooner than later.
And was there ever any thought of, maybe you stepping down and having somebody else come in, just in the sense of maybe somebody who had a little more of that energy to maybe start from that level of like, okay, we got this big battle, we got that big windmill to tilt at, as opposed to closing it down completely and opening it again? There's
been no lack of energy with me, I can assure you of that. But the reason it has to close is it's running out of money. If somebody could have stepped in and said, I can raise millions from the wealthy people in San Diego, that would have been a great idea. But I couldn't do it, my board couldn't do it, my president couldn't do it. My fundraising staff couldn't do it. And people have been aware of this issue for 3 years. This is not a sudden problem. But if you could tell me somebody who could step in tomorrow, this company can be saved, but it needs millions of dollars. And no, it's not fatigue. In fact, I was developing a new plan to change the company in 2016. It was a very interesting way of performing and delivering opera in San Diego. We're not going to get there because of a lack of money. I think 16 could have been very, very interesting. But as I say, if you can't get through 15 into 16, you can't change a thing. And no other person could have done it unless that person could bring great money with them.
And when we had talked before, you mentioned that San Diego Opera's one of the only large artistic companies or organizations that doesn't have their own building, where donors could have a plaque or be the building named after them. The attempt to create an opera house and the fact that it never happened here, is that one of the things that you feel, has been one of those battles that since it didn't succeed, that's one of the things that contributed to this?
The fact that we don't have a building is definitely a problem, because when you go onto the Globe campus or any of the others, the museums, galleries are named after people, buildings have names on them. The Globe has so many names on the buildings. It's wonderful because it means there are people who want to keep that institution alive. We use the Civic Theatre. It's a city building. We can't put names on it. I do believe if we could have put names on it, we may have generated some of the money we need, but that can't be done. The idea of an opera house never really existed in my mind. It was an art center, and it was not something that I created to feel good. It was Joan Kroc who called me at home one night and said, I know it would be good to have an art center with a focus for the city. What would it cost? And because new buildings had been going up in other cities were building theaters, the number was about 400 million, and Joan said then, and her lawyers confirmed it within a couple of days, she would give 200 million. This was not a pipe dream. It had 200 million guaranteed. And we tested it with major donors around the city, and they weren't prepared at that stage to build an arts center that could have been used by us, the symphony, Broadway shows. The Globe was very interested in the theater that was going to be built attached to it. So somewhere in the press they keep saying Campbell had this grandiose idea. It's not true. There was a woman named Joan Kroc who cared about this community, who wanted this to happen. She also wanted to have a school attached to teach music. And my job was to work with her to make that happen. If I could, we couldn't make it happen.
I just meant in terms of the fact that there wasn't a facility like that you guys could call
Yeah, let me take that further. There is no need for a freestanding opera house in San Diego because we can't fill it all the time. It would be wasted real estate the way a football field won't get used anywhere near as much as the cost might require. No, what we need is an arts center. We need one that is flexible, can do many, many things. Call it whatever you want. That was not even an issue with us. It might have been the Joan Kroc Art Center, I don't know. But a freestanding opera house can only exist where there's a lot of opera activity or other activity in it. And again, that was not going to happen, and I don't think it will ever happen. But the Civic Theatre needs to be remodeled. It truly does. It's 50 years old next year, as the opera company would have been. And unless the city and the public are prepared to invest in this building, it will deteriorate more than it has. But if we could have everybody invest in it, make it into an even better theatre than it is, create bigger lobbies, create a donor room, and put names on it, if that could happen, this building can become alive in an even more vigorous way than it is now. So I urge the city to try to find a way to help those who run this theatre make it better than ever for the patron.
And you mentioned Joan Kroc had wanted a school attached. Let me ask, do you think there also needs to be a push to kind of return classical arts to education so that you opera and symphony will have kind of this new generation of patrons?
We've lost so much music in schools, music everywhere, and San Diego in particular, and I emphasize every city is totally different. San Diego has no classical music station to broadcast the Metropolitan Opera, and that was the backbone of people learning a great deal about music. We don't have education in schools that covers music anywhere near as vigorously as we should. We certainly don't have very much publicity in the newspapers about new recordings, emerging singers, even the articles about this company. They're very generous from many newspapers, but we don't focus enough on the leading singers and the quality they are. And a lot of our audience doesn't travel to hear opera elsewhere, and therefore when we bring in a cast, such as we had for Masked Ball, there's very little name recognition here, whereas in Chicago, they would eat it up and sell it out months in advance. So there are many issues in San Diego. We have been bringing thousands of school children to the final dress rehearsals of our operas. They're our best audience. Nobody has told them it's pompous or it's anything else. It's not fat ladies with horns, all of that nonsense. They go and they're entertained, and they cheer, and they boo the villain at the curtain calls, which is just extraordinary. So there's a desire to go to the opera here. There truly is, but there's also a lack of knowledge that allows people to take that step very, very frequently. So we need better arts education up and down this country. We should have a classical music station again where people can hear classical music. It just isn't available anymore. That creates a big hole, and I wish that could be changed.